you doing, guys? Hope everybody had a good holiday. Has anybody ever known somebody who was literally driven by hate? They couldn't go through their day-to-day life without hating something? I always contend that people use two words, love and hate, a little bit too loosely. When people say, oh, I love that person. They may be fond of it or that person, but love, no, they may not love it. And the same thing applies with hate. When somebody's, I hate that person. You ask them why, and they really couldn't tell you why. They just dislike that person. I had a coworker for the last 7 or 8 years who literally was driven by hate for me. This was a crusty old woman that we all got kind of a laugh out of. Now, we used to get along pretty well before I started working there, but once I started working there, all of a sudden I was on the other side of the fence. The only thing anybody could figure out was that she was threatened by me. But as the years went by, she would express her hatred for me. Now, this was something that I never heard. When I was there, things were very quiet. She'd go home. But I would always get feedback how badly she hated me. She'd go on this, that, and the other thing, but really could never make a point. And a few of my coworkers even, why do you hate him so bad? And she'd come up with this, and this, but it never justified that kind of hatred. Like I said, we all used to laugh at her. Now, over the last 3 years, my place of employment has had several different ownership. And about a year ago, she finally had an ear that was listening. So she's still spewing her hate. Now, new management was taking her serious, and they were making my life a living hell, trying to find every reason to fire me. I found, over the last 10 years, I don't retaliate, because I used to be a very vindictive person when I was younger. And I found out that offering no retaliation gives you the opportunity to see karma play out. I've gotten very mellow in my old age. But nonetheless, they were doing their damnedest to fire me. Could never find a reason, so it never happened. But they were pushing. The next step was to try and push me out the door, making the work environment extremely toxic. I could put up with a lot of bull before I finally leave, but things were getting pretty bad. Over the last 6 months, the things she was now saying were very, very destructive things. I mean, it kind of took me off guard, some of the things she was saying. I said, okay, this has got to stop. I still saw no reason to retaliate. People said, why don't you ask her why she hates you so much? My thing was, if she was going to tell me why she hated me so much, she would have. Asking her, there would have been an all-out denial, and I never would have got a straight answer. So I figure I'm kind of tired of the environment anyways. It went from a very comfortable working environment to an extremely toxic one in a very short span of time, and I think my days here are numbered. So I went out and I got myself a new job, and I was juggling both jobs for a while, as I had full intentions of leaving. As time went on, her mouth was getting more and more destructive. My coworkers were now coming up and telling me some of the things she was saying, and a few of them knew that I was on my way out the door. We had another buyout. So I was going to go in and tell the new owner that I was not going to go with the sale, that I'm just going to move on. Got a phone call one day. The day I was going to go in and put my notice in, he asked me if I had plans on leaving, in which I did. But then he told me that things had changed. He didn't like the things she was saying and the vibe that she was giving off, so he fired her. That left me totally silent. But it kind of took me off guard. Here I had a second job. I was planning on leaving, but he removed the obstacle as well as another. So he totally changed the work environment. As it was, I kept that job too. But still, he had pulled her aside and asked her about me, and she was still trying to get me fired. She's going on and on and on, but what he said to me was she could never make a valid point. She expressed how badly she hated you, but it had nothing to do with the work. It had nothing to do with the job. So all he saw was, so he basically cut her loose. I guess she went off. I was asked to stay home that day, and I didn't understand why until I heard this afterwards. It's amazing, since these few obstacles were removed, how relaxed the working environment has gotten again. To this day, I don't know why this woman hated me so badly, and in all honesty, I have no interest. Like I said before, I will never find out. Even if I point blank asked her, she wouldn't have been able to tell me. This was something I saw quite often amongst Jehovah's Witnesses, although for the most part they weren't very vocal. For the most part, anybody who comes in, if you remember, if you came in from the outside, what was the first video you saw? They show you the video of Korah. This indoctrinates you into not asking questions, or you're immediately compared to Korah. I noticed this when a group of us would go out in field service and we'd drive by somebody who was disfellowshipped, and the car group would start trash talking the person. And my thing was, you don't know what they were disfellowshipped for, but they would trash talk. Later you'd find out somebody knew why they were disfellowshipped. Yeah, she was disfellowshipped for smoking. And still the trash talking would continue. It was never anything personal, but they would throw so much venom at this person for smoking. Yeah, that's a real evil crime, considering some of the crimes that JWs overlook. My Bible study, I had a Bible study with probably the most vindictive person that I met while I was in the organization. He would have an outside smile, but you know how you can look at somebody's face. You can tell if they're happy, you can tell if they're angry. All you have to do is look at the eyes. The pasted smile means nothing, because you can look at a person that doesn't have a smile on their face and tell they're a happy person. You can also look at a smiling person and tell that they're not a happy person. And by looking at this guy and listening to him talk over the years, he was an extremely angry person. For the most part, he had nothing good to say about anybody. When you got him alone, he would trash talk anybody. And I found this to be the case my last few months in. Now, like I said before, I'm a very mellow person. I can put up with a lot of guff before I finally have had enough. And I wanted out of the organization because I started noticing the hypocrisy. They would claim to be a loving organization that looks for the best in their brothers and sisters, but in reality, they don't. They're always looking for the worst, and they will dig until they find it. And I just heard one too many people trash talking others, and since I was marked, I knew I was being trash talked. My former Bible instructor, when he found out that it was obvious I was on my way out, took it upon himself to try and reel me back in. We had a few conversations, but after a while it got to the annoying point. I did not want to be bothered 24/7. If I had something to do and I get a surprise knock at the door, or if I was on my way to work and he'd start showing up at work, more times than I could shake a stick at. But when my mind is made up about leaving, I don't want to be pestered anymore. It got to the point where he started showing up at my place of employment with watchtower articles, and I'm like, would you stop coming here? And they would usually end up in the trash anyways. So after a while, I started pushing back just to get under his skin. The last time he and I were out in service, he and one other dude, we're talking about Mike Tyson. And they're having a whole conversation. And that had reminded me about an MMA fight I had seen. No punches were involved in this fight. I want to make that clear. But this one person had an arm lock that literally paralyzed the opponent. And I mentioned it. Well, there was total silence. And the other guy says to me, he says, "Brother, we don't want to talk about violence." And my former instructor says, "That's right, we hate what Jehovah hates." Completely overlooking the fact that they were just talking about Mike Tyson punching people out. Well, I was a little bit pissed off that I was cut off like that. So I had mentioned something at the end of the night when he was dropping me off. And we were talking about the sale of the Brooklyn headquarters, which at the time hadn't been sold yet. And I think, I'm going to get under his skin. So I said to him, I said, the real reason they probably sell the Brooklyn headquarters, and he looks at me and said, why? It's probably to pay for all the child abuse lawsuits. The look this guy gave me was one of confusion, and almost like I betrayed the organization by saying that. The look of disdain in his face. And I'm like, yeah, I got under your skin. Payback's a bitch. And as time went on, it was getting more noticeable. I started getting fed up with his pesky visits. I mean, it was getting to be calling me on the phone, at my door, at my place of employment, to the point I started retaliating. And every time he would come by, I would start making disparaging remarks about the governing body, especially Rubberhead Stephen Lett, and the anger in his eyes, almost like I call his mother a $20 gutter slut. I mean, you could see the hatred in this guy. And it wasn't just him. I mean, every one of us have dealt with trolls. We've all dealt with JWs. The hatred they have for ex-JWs or anybody who's left the organization is unbelievable. And you know, the funny thing is, you really cannot hate a person unless they've done something personally to you. But by leaving the organization, which now makes you an evil apostate, they take that personal. And why? Because their governing body tells you to. I made mention in my last video about the lack of trolls in the comments section of late. I spoke too soon. What was his name? I got a comment, David SBN or something like that on my last video. It says, another hater, an apostate bike rider. Calling me another hater. Yet, I don't recall pointing him out and saying anything, but he saw fit to go out of his way to comment on my channel. Who's the hater? And this is the way they all are. They justify hating ex-JWs. And I always wondered, how far would Jehovah's Witnesses go to get back at the ex-JW community if they got the green light from Watchtower to do so? Can you imagine Watchtower if it was around in the Dark Ages? You can't tell me they wouldn't be stoning people instead of disfellowshipping them. It's a very deep-seated hatred, and yet, much like this crusty old woman I worked with, if you asked one of Jehovah's Witnesses, why do you hate Mike and Kimmy so much? Why do you hate Vinny so much? Why do you hate this one so much? They couldn't justify that hatred. They would say, because they do this, 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 and this, because they do videos, they talk about the organization, but did nothing to them personally. That's the one thing about religion. It's all about control and about compliance. And they hate people because their religion tells them they have to. When it comes down to it, if you pull them aside, why do you hate that person? They'd be like, I don't know. And in all honesty, they don't know. They just have this deep-rooted hatred. Funny thing was, my Bible instructor who wanted to be a wannabe badass and gave me that hate-filled eyes before I left the organization. The last time I saw him outside of a grocery store, apparently he was walking in while I was coming out, and he saw me. It was a little bit too late. Now, I always thought that our first meeting was probably going to come down to fisticuffs after I got disfellowshipped. Funny thing was, I locked eyes coming out, and I just kept my pace going. His pace turned to the side. He turned pale, looked down, gave me a half-ass wave, and walked around me. So much for that. Yeah, you're a real badass, Jeff. But the hatred was because of the organization. Personally, he should have no hatred for me personally because he doesn't know that much about me. And he and I had totally separate lives. Yet when I left, he had to make up excuses why I left. And I'm sure he was trash-talking me in the hall because they all do that. But their hatred is from their organization. And when they hear their governing body on JW Broadcasting displaying hatred, because they use that word apostate and throw it out there constantly, of course, like sheep, the JWs follow suit and do the same damn thing. Anyways, that's just something I wanted to bring out, guys. I will talk to you soon. You guys have a good day.